And underneath the rows of trees, I will see you where the ocean meets the sky.
Hello, folks. Welcome to the most sustainable talk show on the planet, the Green Minded Podcast, with the two handsome-looking green-minded folks you'll ever meet, Victor De La Casa, Matthias Gilbert. Matthias, bring the message home.
Sure. Hey, Victor. Good to see you. Are we really that handsome? I mean,
Oh,
you gotta
hopefully.
go. You gotta go calvo, botak, bald before you can join the handsome club. So
yeah.
get rid of that stuff. Shave it. Be green. Be eco-friendly. Be sustainable. Less water, less shampoo, less time, less money. It's all good. It's eco-efficient. Do it, man.
It's aerodynamically effective as well. I
Yeah,
heard.
and let me reveal a green-minded secret here to all of our listeners. But guys, you got to understand this green-minded in the Philippines means something different than in the rest of the world. It means a little bit kind of the naughty way of
side.
thinking. So that's why Victor is playful. While me as a German, I don't have a sense of humor. I can't make any jokes, guys.
Come on.
That's the truth. But hey, this is the truth. Hopefully my wife doesn't watch this. Oh no, she's okay. She's all right. One day when I went bald like this, got rid of my hair. I mean, shiny, like really, smooth. Now I haven't shaved it for, let's say a week. And so it's less smooth, it's less shiny. But first time ever I experienced that no hair haircut.
Mm-hmm.
And I went to the shopping mall.
Uh-huh.
And before that, it was actually my friend Poesy Liang's event. She asked me, hey, Green Man, you've got to be the green ambassador for the bald empathy movement. She did that because she wanted to raise awareness of especially women with long, beautiful hair who get cancer and lose all of their hair.
Yes.
So she shaved her hair at the Cannes Film Festival.
Wow.
And we had a parallel event in Kuala Lumpur. And there was this famous, fashion
statement
hairdresser, stylist, nice, great guy. He was gay, so he was like, oh, Matthias, this looks really great, wonderful. But I was kind of more interested, what do the women think? So I asked the ladies, hey, ladies, is it better before or now? And they all said it's better now. I was like, wow, that's great. But, the test really came. I went to the shopping mall that I usually go to after that, to have a meal and to do some shopping. And suddenly it dawned on me, man, how come so many women smiling at me today? Wow. It had an immediate impact, man. I'm telling you.
And yeah. Like I noticed that men who are bald is actually more desirable than us guys with lots of hair. And this thing, like, my sickness when it comes to hair, number one, my hair has a curly part at the front. You know what is that? Oh, in Filipino we call it puyo. Like that's the center part of your hair, like where the hair is originating from or something. Mine is located at the front, so it curls up here at the very front, which is kind of annoying for me sometimes. And number two, I don't get bald.
Get rid of it, man.
But that's the thing. I don't get bald, but I my hair turns white. It turns white. It's been turning white since I was like, I don't know, like 12 years old, grade 6. If I recall,
Really?
the first time I've seen white hair, and
You mean
it has
white or gray?
oh, gray,
White or
gray,
gray?
yeah, it turns gray, yeah. So it's been accelerating the last couple of years, and now I have to color it. Otherwise, I'd look odd, and sometimes I really wanted to cut it off and be bald. My only concern is I'm kind of.
You don't sweat today, otherwise you'll look like Rudy Giuliani, right?
Oh my
Having
God!
your coloring running
Yeah.
down your
Oh
face, man.
my, yeah, that's.
Have you got the
terrible.
aircon switched on, or are you eco-friendly just with the fan?
I'm just using the fan, the electric fan.
Wow, man.
Yeah.
Good.
Being kids, they want air conditioning, so okay. So a couple of hours, like we turn it on around like 10 o'clock until 12, and that's it. Good thing it has a timer, so which is cool. By the time that it turns off, the kids are already asleep, and nowadays it's cold. It's very cold now. Like you
Yeah.
can feel that cool Christmas breeze already
Mm.
coming in. So that's awesome. At least a couple of months of comfort when it comes to the temperature at home.
Yeah. I think it really depends on the circumstances. When I was living my bachelor lifestyle, I
Mm.
didn't use aircon,
Mm-hmm.
uh, only in exceptional circumstances.
Yeah.
And I was using the fan all the
All
time.
the time. Yeah.
And my electricity bill was super low. But now,
Yep.
as a family man, young kids,
Yeah.
we have
I
a baby
know.
son who gets rashes if he sweats too much. So, yeah, the aircon is on, man. So the
It's
green man who used to have an electricity bill of less than $10, as you can read in my old profile, has
yeah.
now got a much higher carbon footprint
But
working
you
from home. Yeah.
but that's the thing. Like when you have kids, it changes all the dynamics or
Yeah.
everything that you're used to. You don't need air conditioning in
Mm,
Canada, even
sure.
during the summer months. I don't recall ever needing air conditioning, even during the summer months. You just open the window and let the breeze get inside, and that's comfortable enough. I mean,
Same in
room
good old
temperature,
Germany,
right?
where I come from, man.
Oh
We,
yeah,
we, we never ever in my life had any air conditioning.
yeah,
But I mean, you need the heating in the
yes,
winter
yeah,
when it
of
gets
course,
minus 10,
yeah.
minus 20 Celsius outside. You better got
Mm-hmm.
some heating system. Otherwise, you'll really be
What
seriously freezing.
What I used to do, I used to buy wood because I have a wood stove. You know what that
Mm.
means?
Yeah, yeah, yeah.
Like a fireplace, but it's
Yeah.
a small one, right? So
So that was enough to heat your house?
I also have electricity. I have
Mm.
oil running through the house, but in order to bring the consumption down, because it's really expensive during the winter months. So I
Yes,
would
yes,
buy,
yes.
I would say like a cord of wood. When you say a cord, it's a lot of wood, and I have two axes that I use to chop them down. I don't have like the machine that they use to bring them to smaller sizes. So you have a log this yay big, and then you chop it, and then you come up with this, like around 2 inches thick of wood that you can put inside the wood stove, and then that's what you use to heat up the house. When you arrive at night or in the afternoons. So at least that brings down the consumption of electricity. But like back then, I wasn't really concerned that much with the environment. When I think about it now, imagine how many trees we've been cutting over there in Canada. Because every house uses that. Every house
Yeah.
over there, like when you go outside during the winter months in Canada, you the entire place, it smells like wood. It smells
Yeah.
like a wood stove or a fireplace. You can smell it everywhere. And
It's
imagine,
just
yeah,
It's the same in my village in Germany, but it depends on where is the wood coming from.
yes, that's
Now,
true. Yeah.
did you know where that wood came from that you use?
I would assume, being in Canada, being up north,
Mm.
and there are a lot of conifer trees over there, pine and all that. So that's where they usually get them. I would assume that that's where. I don't think that they would use maple, but then again, I could be wrong. These are prime Canadian wood that I would say some of them were taken from what do you call this? Some of them are softwood, wet wood, and some of them are just like forest wood
Yeah.
in Canada,
I mean,
and
it
it's
really
big
depends on
business.
how, yeah, on how the forest is managed, you know, whether it's
Mm.
sustainably managed. And I
Uh,
would assume that is the case in
it is,
Canada,
yeah, yeah,
because interestingly enough,
mm,
in my village in Germany,
yeah,
the forest belongs to the village community.
yes,
And
yes,
you have shares in the forest. And
mm,
every year, a certain part of the forest is being designated for harvesting. And
yes,
this is done. And this is what we did as kids with our parents. We went in the forest, we chopped down the trees. So, hey, the green man, wow, he chopped down trees. I mean, isn't that a bad thing? Yes, in a
Mm,
way,
it
yes.
is, yeah,
But in another way, if you do it in a sustainable way, and that is the beauty of the forest management in my
mm-hmm.
village in
Yes,
Germany, in my barangay,
yeah, yeah,
it's all managed and controlled by the village community. There are no big cronies who own all the land or
yep,
all the forest who just want to chop and make money. So the whole management is built on long-term sustainability. There were
Yeah.
always two types of forest, either the tall trees or the shorter trees. The shorter trees was birch wood, and the
Mm-hmm.
birch wood
Yeah.
has a 30-year cycle. It
Yeah.
regrows by itself. You harvest it and you go back there a couple of months later and the trees start regrowing again. So I can
Yes.
remember an area that we harvested when I was a youngster, when I was back in my village 10 years ago. That area had grown back
Uh
again.
huh. Yeah.
So
Of
this
course.
is really interesting. And biomass, and I think we'll come later to that when we talk
Yes.
about biomass and energy. This is essentially power or heat from biomass,
Mm-hmm.
and it's actually renewable. But
Yes.
then it depends on the management of
It.
the
Yeah. It
land and the
does.
forest, whether it's good or not. And it depends on the efficiency of your combustion. If you have a
Mm-hmm.
very clean oven that burns it in an efficient way
Yeah.
without too much SOx, NOx, and carbon, I mean, carbon dioxide is more or
Yeah.
less the same level,
Yes.
because the carbon of the tree gets turned into carbon dioxide.
Yep.
But your sulfur dioxide and your nitrous oxides, they are critical to whether it is okay for the planet or not.
Yeah, yeah. I think in Canada, Canada does a good job of protecting their wildlife, and at the same time, the trees that they have over there. That's one of the things that I'm really proud as a Canadian. It's something that I'm really proud of, and every year they're so active at replanting and replenishing whatever tree has been cut down for heating purposes. And also, the people over there would not stand to see, like, like a patch of forest that has been,
Mm,
bald calvo, simply because it's
yes,
been
yes.
used. I mean, every I would say, like, from Nova Scotia, New Brunswick, Newfoundland, all the way down to around like Alberta, Canada.
Mm,
Everybody uses wood. It's
yeah,
either wood, you buy oil, or direct electricity, right?
yeah,
And in order to reduce the cost of electricity and oil during the winter months, wood is the only alternative you have. That's the only choice
yeah.
you have
Mm.
left. So
I mean,
I
gas is another option, and
but not
insulation.
yeah.
Insulation would actually be the most environmentally friendly option, but you would have to
Oh,
invest a significant amount of money in one shot.
mm,
But you could retrofit your windows. There are products for windows
yeah.
insulation. There are products
Oh,
for
I'm
your
telling you though,
walls,
Matthias.
paints, or stuff like that.
I'm telling you though, Matthias. When
Mm,
in Canada, because all the houses are, you have like the brick
mm,
outside and insulation in the middle, and then you have the wood inside, right? All
mm,
the houses are insulated, well insulated. It's part of the law to ensure that the house is well insulated.
mm,
The problem is it's really biting cold in Canada during the winter months.
yeah,
And
yeah,
I'm
yeah,
not
yeah,
joking how cold it is. I went to Europe this February, and it was like around like -5 or something.
yeah.
And that's like okay. That's
Mm,
wow, that's not cold. That's perfect winter. Because in
yeah,
Canada, when you go to Canada in the middle of winter, December, let's say around like December 21, winter solstice, right? It's
yes.
really biting cold, especially with the snowstorm and the wind chill. You go down to around like -50 temperatures over there,
How much minus?
-50 with the wind chill factor. Even
50, minus
yeah,
50,
I'm
five
not
zero.
kidding.
Wow,
You
that is
you'd come out of
serious.
your house. You'd come
That
out
is
of your
serious,
house,
man.
and your head feels like it got hit by a
Mm,
truck. It's so lightheaded because of the wind, because of the cold, how cold it is. You're basically breathing out chill, right?
yeah, minus 50 Celsius.
That
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 is serious. That is
that is
very
seriously
serious,
cold.
man. I
And
mean, in my village, maximum minus 20 in Germany, where I come
oh,
from. That's it.
minus
But
20 is already cold
nothing,
when you think about it.
nothing. Yeah,
So
minus
imagine minus
20,
50.
but usually not more than that.
You you
But
know
yeah,
you you know where I could compare the temperature in Canada, in Germany? Uh Train stations.
mm,
When you go to the train station, remember, like the tunnel, right? The tunnel.
oh, yeah, 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 yeah,
That is biting cold.
yeah, yeah.
When you get stuck in in the tunnels, the train
Mm,
station tunnels, that is really
yeah.
cold. And I would say that is kind of comparable to the kind of temperature Canada has, way up north in Nova Scotia, and especially in Nova Scotia where I used to live. We're so close to the Atlantic Ocean. We're getting everything. Like all the wind chill, all the wind is coming in from the sea, and during winter it really gets cold. It's so cold. A lot of the lakes, even the coastlines, they freeze over.
Yeah.
That's how cold it is over there. And I
With that,
yeah, yeah. Go ahead.
So with that wind chill, did you guys make a lot of use of wind turbines, wind power?
I am
Our
not sure.
last week's topic.
Yes,
Be
last
the
week's
perfect
topic.
place for wind turbines,
I
unless it's too cold, so that they
I
freeze
would
in operation.
that's probably one of the concerns because I've never seen a wind turbine in Nova Scotia. I'm not sure about the other provinces, right? But in Nova Scotia, I know that Nova Scotia Power used to I think they use oil and diesel because we have our own plant over there, oil plant in Nova Scotia. That's where most of the oil coming from the east coast gets dropped off and it gets filtered or cleaned. So that's the first stop basically before it goes to the United States. So it goes there, gets cleaned up. Some of the oil being used in power generation.
So I
In
guess
terms
it's
of wind
cheap over
power, I
there,
don't
right?
think we have that. I'm not sure. I'm not 100% sure, so don't quote me on this. But I've never heard Nova Scotia using a wind as a power source.
There are places where the wind is maybe too strong for certain wind turbines. That's what I saw in Japan as well.
Yeah.
I went to an amazing small island called Miyako Island.
Uh huh.
I participated in a tree planting event. I gave some public talks on Go Green. I was on the local television and everything. And then they showed me an area. Oh, over there, we used to have 3 wind turbines,
Mm-hmm.
but they disappeared. One of the storms basically wiped them out.
Yeah, yeah.
So this was, and this was a place where a German ship basically had, and this area is famous for shipwrecks because
Uh-huh.
there are huge storms. So a German ship shipwrecked there, and the people from the island rescued the Germans. And then
Wow.
the Germans came back and told the Kaiser that they'd been rescued. So the Kaiser, the German Kaiser, then sent a ship back with thank you.
Hmm.
And there has been a long relationship. And
Between
this
yeah.
Miyako Island was amazing. Even though there are very few people, they have a full-blown German
Community.
museum there.
Wow.
Incredible, which
Wow.
was opened up by the former German Chancellor Gerhard Schröder, who is
Mhm.
now buddies with Putin and promotes Putin's gas pipelines and stuff
Yeah,
like
yeah.
that. But yeah, that was an amazing experience. And there, the wind turbines had made a runner because the wind had basically taken
Blew them
them out
off.
of their anchors. Yeah,
Yeah.
blown them out of sync.
Oh man.
But then it comes, to the question, how solid do you make your technology, your foundation, especially in those typhoon-prone areas? And if
Yes.
you look at Europe, you look at Denmark, Germany, UK, we talked about it last time, wind power on sea, that is where the big growth area is. In the ocean, you don't need additional land. You don't have too many people complaining about
Yep.
their vista being destroyed, their view being
Mhm.
destroyed. And that really seems to be the trend.
Like Donald
So
Trump.
they must have
Yeah.
found ways to really anchor them so strongly, or even I think there are floating platforms sometimes. So
Yeah.
there's a lot of innovation there.
As long as they would stand though, like they could withstand the power of the wind, especially during
Yeah.
winter time. I'm not
Yeah.
sure if would be able, but having said that, it's still possible though. It's just a matter of trying to find the right location, like you said. It's all about management, wherever.
Same like forest management. It's all about the
Exactly.
management of the forest, how
Exactly.
you make it sustainable, how you have a continuous forest there so there's biodiversity, there's enough animals,
Hmm.
stuff like that. I have a forest plantation in Panama, 4 hectares
Yes.
of it,
Yep.
and it's biodiverse. It's got various different tree species, and it is like my eco-friendly pension system. I bought the land
Yeah.
and I paid the management company money 15 years ago. in
Wow.
2005 to
Yeah.
plant it for me. And now I'm planning to bring some of that wood to Finland
Uh-huh.
because my friend has a very eco-friendly technology
Mm-hmm.
to turn small and not so dense sapwood into high performance building materials.
Wow.
Because I
Yeah.
believe there's going to be a big mega trend that we will be shifting away as much as possible from steel and from concrete
Yes.
to sustainable wood as a major source for building materials. But we need to increase the usability, the strength, the weather resistance of the
Yep.
wood to use it as a structural and as an exterior and interior material, so that it lasts super, super long. And that is exactly what this technology does. It basically densifies it,
Mm-hmm.
it dries it, it takes out the moisture, so the
Yeah.
bacteria cannot get at it, and
Wow.
it
Okay.
increases the surface properties and performance through a very fast process. So that's what I want to try with my stuff from Panama in Finland. And then hopefully it will become some high performance material
Mm-hmm.
that can be used to lock in the carbon through sustainably planted wood that can then become building material. And if we have the carbon locked in there for the next 200-300 years, then we have a real long lasting carbon sink that can help, rather than cement or steel where we are pouring loads and
I
loads of
know.
CO2
And
emissions into the
and
air.
and not only that, like once you've used up like concrete, for example, and steel, you cannot reuse these materials anymore once
Yeah,
you've used them. So, for example,
another.
like
Yeah,
you want to build a new house, you have to you have to get rid of the old one, right? So you have to
yeah,
destroy that house, demolish the building, and you have a lot of steel, a lot of cement, and where are they going, right? You could
yeah.
use them as
You
a
can't.
foundation
Yeah,
of the house, I guess. If you're gonna, if you are gonna raise your house, like here in the Philippines, it's okay. But in some parts of the world, wherein they have no problems with floods, right? What happens to them? They end up somewhere in a landfill somewhere, emitting carbon,
yeah,
right? And whatever stuff they're emitting in out into the atmosphere. So that's crazy. Uh, Today's topic, Matthias, you mentioned
yeah.
fracking, and we'll
Wow.
probably be talking about other alternative sources of energy as well. So, fracking. The reason why we are going to be discussing fracking is because remember last week we talked about the debate, the presidential debate in the United States, and how it turned what the platforms of both parties are when it comes to climate change. One of the things that I noticed is that Trump was really insisting during the debate that Biden is against fracking, or what do you call that? Hydraulic fracturing. I think that's the other name for fracking. So here's the scoop. Last year, I was doing a research on sustainable manufacturing processes, how you can reduce your carbon emission, right?
Mm.
And I came across this article. It's called carbon injection. So basically, you're injecting carbon back into the
Yeah.
earth, soil, into the ground,
Mm.
right? And it will actually help in reducing carbon emissions. According to the UN, it has a role to play in the future. So that's cool. And that was the first time I encountered fracking. Never really thought much about it. I thought, okay, maybe it's a more sustainable way of doing, mining oil and gas, right? Until the debate wherein Trump was really, like, you're against fracking, you're against fracking, you're against fracking, you're against. He was like that, right? He nonstop telling Biden that he Biden is against fracking. Biden had to justify, had to uh, be on the defense because this is a very sensitive and controversial topic,
Yeah,
apparently,
definitely.
especially in
I
the United
mean,
States.
a
So
lot of people have made money with
with
fracking,
fracking,
and
yes,
there are some additional jobs that have been created. It's put the US into a much stronger position in terms of being energy independent. And that is really the argument why people are doing it.
oh,
But then you need to look at the flip side. What are
yep,
the negative environmental and societal impacts? What could be the long term liabilities that people
mm-hmm,
don't really think about when they are doing it at the moment? And I don't think they're putting any money aside to potentially pay for long term liabilities. That's the problem with quite a lot of power generation activity.
And like you said, it's a sunset industry, and everybody is like I was watching TED, not TED Talks, but the TED animation channel. I
Yeah.
forgot what the full name of that channel is, but the TED has an educational show. They use animation, and they
Mm.
explained the different issues about fracking, and which is something that is really interesting because right now it is a sunset industry. It's mining maybe it's not gonna disappear in the next 100 years. It's still gonna be there. It's something that we humans have been doing for millions and millions of years now, or as long as recorded history. However, we are running out of resources at this point. We're running out, and that's why we are resorting to measures like fracking now, because oil and gas is running dry. The oil beds, the oil wells are not pumping enough,
It's
right?
becoming more expensive because you got to go deeper and deeper,
Deeper.
further out
Yep.
field, and cost of production is really a key, especially when the price of oil went down the drain. Suddenly, a lot of these large oil producers had wells running that
Of
are more
course.
costly to operate than the margins that they are getting from selling. So they're selling at a loss. And I guess that's where this fracking has been very attractive for people.
And it's
That
become very
it's been
popular. Yeah.
it's been a kind of fairly cost effective. But
But
it really depends. When the price of oil was like, what was it, $20 per
mm,
barrel? Uh, I think at that point in time, the message was fracking isn't making any money anymore because the investment is too expensive compared to that low oil and gas price. So the price fluctuation in the market as well determines a lot whether it's profitable or not.
yeah. But and not only that, uh, I'm not 100% convinced that fracking is the most cost efficient out there.
Mm,
Remember, you're using chemicals, you're
mm,
using a lot of water and
mm.
and soil and rocks basically to crush the bedrock, the shale rock,
Mm.
right? The
Frack
water
it.
that you
Yeah.
pump into the ground is not based on what I've read. Okay,
Mm.
the water has to be they have to retreat the water basically that they pump in
Yeah.
because they have to constantly pump water in at high pressures in order to crush the rock,
Mm.
right?
Mm.
So what happens to
There's
that water?
radioactivity that it picks up, heavy metals, stuff like
Yes,
that.
yes,
Yes,
and not only
contaminated
that,
water.
like you have toxic elements as well,
Mm.
right? So you're pumping a lot of water. This water, you have to filter them again, clean them up, add more chemicals, and according to scientists, the water is just gonna result to more toxic quality water. It's not gonna be the same water as it used to. It's gonna have toxic elements, more costly to clean up, and more costly to reuse than just leaving it there. Like just pumping it and bye bye water. So is this really the way of the future when it comes to mining oil and gas? Note that the reason why, like for me, based on my understanding, the reason why it's become very popular is because the United States, a lot of the oil wells, a lot of the oil beds, the reserve for oil and gas is running low. And they can only drill as far as I believe through 2,500 meters. Is it meters or kilometers? Something like that, right?
Meters,
Meters.
definitely not
Okay.
kilometers. Yeah, that
2,000
would
to
be that'd
yeah,
be crazy. You would
that's too far.
yeah,
So okay, 2,000 to
impossible.
3,000 meters deep, and then fracking comes in because it's actually a drilling that goes horizontal. So you have
Yeah.
drilling, vertical drilling going down into the rock, into the bedrock, and then fracking goes in and does a horizontal cut, and then they crack the shale rock. They insert, like they poke holes into the shale rock, And
Yeah.
then after 3 months, they inject water, they pump water in and start the process of fracking, wherein they're trying to recover. They're creating fissures. They're cracking the bedrock itself in order to recover oil, natural oil and gas from where they are hiding,
Yeah.
that were once no longer reachable by ordinary drilling processes.
Yeah.
What do you
Yeah.
think about this?
I'm not really a technical expert on the oil and gas industry. I've got
Yes,
to
yes.
declare that up front. So
Mhm.
this is more from a layman's perspective.
Yeah.
Uh, I can understand why people are doing it because it's good business.
Yes.
Full stop. I mean, it's helped the US in terms of becoming energy independent, but there are huge risks associated with it. I mean, it's been shown that seismic activity has been enhanced in areas where there are a lot of wells that have applied fracking. We don't really know what is the long-term impact in terms of when you have a lot of these little cracks out there already in the sediment, when you've been taking out oil, when you've been taking out gas.
Yeah.
And basically, you have empty spaces now down there
Yeah.
between those rocks that were
You have gaps
previously,
now.
particularly with the liquid, with the oil.
Mhm.
The gas in a way, I think is the density of the gas is not high. And I don't think that the gas usually holds together areas that would otherwise have some movement, but particularly the ones that were previously filled with liquid. And now you have those micro cracks in there
Yep.
where the gas and the oil went through. So that in itself enables potentially more movement. But again, I'm not an expert on seismology, on earthquake and stuff like that. But there is this concern that maybe in the long term, there might be higher risks of such things happening. We don't really know. And I don't think people put money aside to cater for that. Then we have the release of the methane, in particular, the gas that comes from those operations. In addition, from the wells, in addition to the contaminated water that you've already mentioned.
Exactly.
And the contaminated water, you can store it somewhere, you can treat it in a wastewater treatment plant, you can recycle it, but if you recycle it, then the density or the level of contamination might increase every cycle that you're using it. So there's no simple low-cost solution. Sometimes maybe the temptation is that people just get rid of the contaminated water and then somehow it will find its way back into the groundwater. We know, even though it's not allowed, people sometimes cut corners to make higher profitability. Yeah. It reminds me when I first came to Southeast Asia. Yeah. My first country I visited was Indonesia. And I was still a youngster. I was like 28 when I first turned up there. And I gave a talk on go green, waste minimization. And a business person stood up and said to me, yes, you got to do this in Germany. But here in Indonesia, things are different. We don't have to pay to get rid of our waste.
Yes, exactly.
We can just get rid of it. It doesn't cost us anything.
Out of sight, out of mind.
That's why we don't need. Yeah, that's why we don't need to do anything. Yeah. I was thinking for a while, but then I kind of countered him and said, "Okay, how much money did you pay to manufacture waste? The cost of your raw material, the cost of electricity, the cost of labor, the cost of your machines. So, are you sure it didn't cost you anything to get rid of the waste? There's a lot of hidden costs involved. Yes. But yes, waste disposal as such is low cost. So in a country where waste disposal costs a lot more, especially if it's contaminated, and that will be the case in the US or in Europe, people might be tempted to get rid of it other ways. So we have the contaminated water problem. We have the methane release, which contributes to climate change because we have a 20 plus times higher global warming impact. So if we are calculating the carbon dioxide equivalence of methane, we have to, I think, multiply it with 24 to get the equivalent. On the other hand, you could argue using more gas and replacing some coal-fired power plants, the gas from fracking can reduce the CO2 emissions a little bit because it is a cleaner fuel.
It
which
is.
is correct in a way.
Yeah.
So
Yeah.
you've got
I
arguments from all
yeah.
sides, but overall, I am not a big fan of fracking. I think the short and long-term environmental, societal impacts
Mhm.
have not really been taken enough into consideration, and they are in contrast to the short-term gain of those people that run these
Exactly.
operations and that have invested in those. So we need to look at it more holistically. We need to look at it long term. And I agree with that. If we can find more renewable ways that are more benign in terms of their environmental impact, we should shift to
Mhm.
those.
Speaking of which, like with regards to fracking, because you mentioned that it is a cleaner energy, or the gas or of the process that they use to recover the gas is cleaner. It has a lower carbon emission footprint.
Not necessarily the process is cleaner, because the process has
Mm.
itself problems with the water contamination, the
Yeah,
chemicals that you're using. If you're actually making a mistake and you are hitting some water aquifer, or you have a leakage in your system,
yes,
and some of the contaminated water or gas escapes into the groundwater,
and goes into the
then you
water
might have
system.
burning
Yeah,
water,
yeah,
because there's loads of methane in your water, and this has happened. So, but the fuel itself, the methane CH4, if you've got it and you're burning it either for power generation or for heating,
hmm
it is a cleaner fuel.
and
But the
yeah,
process of getting that cleaner fuel, that is what we need to look at
and and
in
and and
detail.
I, and like I said, like good thing you pointed that out, because I saw in another article that it is a cleaner fuel, but it's more expensive to what do you call that, to process, because you are actually getting fuel that has water, has chemicals, has other contaminants like soil and rock in them, which and the volume that they're recovering is not that huge anyway.
Mm.
So from like an economic standpoint, you're looking at oil that was harvested in a way that is not guaranteed the cleanest, I would say. You have to do more in order to clean up, because you've added a lot of chemicals, during the process of harvesting them. At the same time, you have issues with communities
Yeah.
potentially getting toxic water if the toxicity of the procedure seeps through into their water system.
Yeah.
Plus, you have to understand, like in the United States, they have centralized what do you call this? Uh, they use centralized gas. You know what I mean? Like for example, like
Yeah.
it's down the pipes going to
The
your
gas
heating, and
pipelines,
yeah,
yes.
gas pipelines. It could potentially affect that as well. You have potential problems with tremors, like you said, earthquake, because a lot of people have already reported the increase in occurrence of, like the ground has been shaking, that kind of thing. And that is really crazy, because the United States is not well known for earthquakes. It's very rare. I always say,
Yeah.
like when I was in Canada, I think I've only experienced earthquake once, and it's not even that strong. It's like
Yeah.
sudden.
What
And
would you do if you would have suddenly, a guy putting
mm,
up, less than 500 meters from your house, or let's say 100
yeah.
meters from your house, one of those operations to do a fracking,
Mm,
drilling, I guess in Europe, and maybe here in Southeast Asia, maybe less so. You could protest against it. You could
yeah.
potentially, get your local politicians involved. But I think in the US, it's been largely pro industry. Get it done if you own the land and make your money.
And I think
Even though if your house starts shaking sooner or later, I mean, that is an assumption now.
yeah.
There is more seismic activity. Whether that brings the house to shaking depends on the scale of the seismic
I mean,
activity.
like
Yeah, the
I
risk is increased.
what I mean, we're not judging the fracking industry or the oil and gas industry with their use of fracking. And like you said, we're not really experts on this, but it's really interesting to point out that, for example, a lot of people have reported that they can feel tremors. They felt shaking underground. They felt that the foundation of their house, where their house is standing, has not been very stable ever since some fracking has occurred in their community or their area nearby, right? And
Yeah, so
and
most likely a much bigger risk to your family's health
health
and
and
your
safety.
property value
Yeah.
than the windmills, right?
And you have to also consider the fact that these guys, the fracking people, they are playing around with the foundations, the bedrocks,
Mm,
or shale rocks, whatever they call them
mm,
over there. And in most cases, like these rocks are really huge. They've been compacted for millennia, millions of years, untouched, just sitting there, stable, secured. All of a sudden, you come in, you turn them into mush, and what do you
shaky,
expect?
shaky,
Right? So what do you
shaky,
expect?
shaky.
Shaky, shaky, right? So it's one it's there are huge risks involved in this. Plus, we forgot the amount of energy needed in order to get this operation running. So we're also looking at the usage of a lot of oil anyway in order to get this fracking thing happening. You need electricity. If there's no electrical source, then you need more oil in order to operate machines that will do the horizontal drilling and pumping of
But
water.
let's put it to the test, Victor. If
Yeah,
you own a house somewhere in a beautiful place in North America,
yeah.
and let's say Philadelphia,
Mm-hmm.
and you have a wonderful piece of land, couple of hectares
Yeah.
there, and it's 200 meters from your house, and a guy offers you $1 million for that piece of land, and he wants to do fracking, and you're a bit tight on cash. What would you do?
Wait, number one. Uh, okay, I'm not sure about Philadelphia, but let's say it's in Canada because I'm more familiar.
Yeah.
In Canada, the community will also have a final say on it.
Mm,
You cannot just do improvements, I believe, or sell something, especially if it's for the purpose of fracking or oil mining, for example. If they
mm,
found out, because everybody's, if oil is there, everybody could make money, but at the same time, the property
mm.
value of the community goes down. So
Goes
everybody has
down.
a say.
Yeah.
They
Effective.
they're very big on that. Like that's why you have like what do you call them? Community patrols. Like I used to be part of it. Like our small block over there in Dartmouth. Like every other night, we'd take shifts, take turns at patrolling. Or you don't really need to patrol, but you have to look around and see what's going on outside just in case. So
Pond patrol or community patrol?
community, like we have
Just kidding. My daughter
Paw
sometimes
Patrol.
washes it.
Yeah, I
That's
know,
why
I know. But
that's
but
why I was thinking of that at the moment. Yeah.
yeah, in some places, and I would assume it's probably the same thing in Philadelphia. Unless if the value is really that high and the community is going to benefit from it, I don't think there's going to be any problem. But for example, if they realize that you're the only one who's going to be selling your land, we're not going to be selling ours, and then all the value of all the properties here are going to go down simply because you have a drilling
Yeah.
operation. No, we're
You're
not going
the
to
only
allow
one
it.
making the big bucks.
You're the
You're the
only one.
only one
Yeah,
cashing
yeah,
in.
right.
Let's say nobody else cashes in.
Yep.
You are green. You're green minded, right? We
Mm-hmm.
know that from this podcast.
Yeah.
You're the green minded Victor. But what would you do, man? The guy has written the check there. You just got to accept it. It's $1 million. You're very tight on money. Your family back in the Philippines has a couple of people sick. They need a hospital. They can't pay the bills. What are you going to
It's.
do?
I'm not sure yet. It like let's say like I'm really really destitute. Maybe it's
Mm,
possible that I would do it if I'm really desperate for it. But like I
mm.
said, the community has a say anyway. It's not
Yeah.
like you could just sell it off just like that. I mean, you could
Are
because
you
it's your
sure?
property. When you think about it, it
Yeah.
is my property. I could
Yeah,
sell
yeah,
it
yeah.
to anyone I want. But at the end of the day, you're gonna be facing a lot of problems with your neighbors, right? I'm not 100% sure, but in Canada, I know that the your neighbors also has to approve like something if they want you in, something like that.
Mm.
In fact, there have been cases wherein if they know that uh, a well-known person, like a well-known celebrity is buying
Yeah,
a
yeah,
house
yeah.
nearby,
Yeah,
right?
yeah,
Sometimes they would actually protest against that
yeah. Yeah, yeah.
because they
Too much
don't want
attention.
that. Yeah, they don't want the
Mm.
paparazzi and all that issue with reporters coming in. So
Mm.
so I would say it's gonna be the same issue as with land. And even if you've gotten the money, for example, like, okay, we sold it under the table, nobody knew, in the middle of the night, it got sold, right? The guy who bought it from me will have to face similar issues because there's a community there that would do whatever it can in order to sabotage that operation. He
But
has to
correct me
buy
if I'm
basically the,
wrong.
the entire community.
Yeah,
Yeah.
correct me if I'm wrong. In the US,
Mm.
it's been all in favor of the fracking industry.
They
So the
I would
fracking
say, yeah.
industry was able to do their job
Yeah.
without too much ability for the local community to say no.
Yes.
I don't know. I'm just assuming that because otherwise, I read somewhere there are 1.7 million fracking wells
Hmm.
in the US. Can you imagine?
And that's the number. Matthias,
Unbelievable.
that's the number of dead
Unbelievable.
wells in the United States when you think
Yeah.
about it. Because the whole
Wow.
fracking operation, the reason why it became so popular is
Mm,
because it's what they call the less evil way of mining oil. But the
mm,
reason why fracking has become really popular is because of the fact that they're running out of oil. The, the,
mm.
the oil wells that used to pump out these oil and gas are no longer
Yeah.
pumping out
The
anything.
traditional
So
ones.
so
Yeah.
they have to take these extreme measures in order to get oil out. And let's
Mm,
face it, when it comes to oil in the United States, they're so reliant in oil. A lot of people are making money out of it. A lot of people are getting employed by the oil sector, oil industry, or gas industry.
mm.
It becomes like, okay, even though it is not really sustainable, I would say it's gonna get approved simply because it's oil. It's the recovery of oil. It's a
Yeah.
way for us to continue this operation basically of.
But it's one more reason that you need to diversify because if you
Mhm.
are depending on oil, if you have an inefficient economy, you are going to be less competitive unless you increase the efficiency. Those societies with the highest efficiency, like the lowest CO2 emission per 1,000 US dollar of GDP generated,
Yeah.
those are the eco-efficient societies, those are the sustainable societies, and they are usually as well the ones with a good quality of life. Because if you're inefficiently wasting your oil, you're inefficiently wasting your electricity, you're inefficiently heating your buildings, then you have a much higher CO2 emission for your GDP.
Hmm.
So that means your transition risk in the future is becoming higher and higher, and your economic output is generated at a much higher carbon footprint. So it's time for you to shift, and that's what I think is what the Green New Deal is all about when we're
Hmm.
talking about Europe or Southeast Asia, to shift to a more efficient society
Yep.
and generate loads of clean and green jobs with it.
But
Not destroy jobs, but generate better, healthier, and cleaner jobs.
jobs. But here's the thing, like with fracking, and especially it being so popular in the United States, it's so popular that Biden, despite the fact that he wants to transition, has to
Mm,
answer it with, "No, I'm okay with fracking," blah
mm.
blah blah, because he's
Yeah.
being pressured, right? And
Yeah, he
and
can't say blatantly,
that,
no, I
yes,
want to
of
stop it all.
course. Otherwise, he's gonna lose his Texas votes, right?
Mm.
But
He
with
lost Texas anyway,
he
right?
lost it anyway. Yeah, you're right.
Mm,
But let's face it, fracking is being seen as the new hope for the oil industry, oil and gas industry.
mm,
And given the data that you gave last week, with regards to solar, renewable energy, jobs in the United States and all that, this now creates a situation wherein, even though it makes sense to transition now to renewables, it is going to slow that process down because you have this fracking, which is being seen as the lesser evil and it's still not maybe not the most efficient way, but it is a way to get more oil out of the land. And right.
Usually, those people that have been classically oil and gas, they will continue oil and gas because that's what they know. Okay, some companies shift, and
Yeah.
we have heard it just recently. The big oil companies, they are talking now about climate neutrality. They are talking about shifting
Which
to
is good.
renewables.
Yeah.
Why? Not because they are suddenly overnight, uh, believers. They have realized the economic reality
Yep.
of uh, their classical business starting to slow down, become less predictable, less profitable, maybe, and that you need to diversify. Otherwise,
The
you might be out in 10, 20 years' time.
like you said, it's a sunset industry. It's very volatile right now,
Yeah.
and the only way for you to reduce the volatility with regards to the market and the supply is to find alternatives to that you can, alternative products that you can sell. So for example, like you mentioned last week, maybe they could come up with like a modern solar powers plants that they, I don't know, but they could come up with solar powered cars, for example.
Oh, that's, I
Right
mean, Petronas in Malaysia has acquired a solar company.
there. Right?
Total is one of the owners of a big solar operation. So this has
Yeah.
happened. But what do you think, Victor, about nuclear power? I mean, the Philippines is
Hmm.
discussing about
We've always been.
potentially a
Yeah.
nuclear power plant. What's your view on nuclear in the context of this discussion?
It's twofold. So on the one side, I agree with it, as long as it's safe. It is, yeah, basically the safety part of it, because we've seen what it could do. I mean, in Chernobyl, and then 2011 Sendai earthquake, right? Like the one in Japan.
Mm.
And if not done the right way, it could be very disastrous. But if it's well taken care of, it's well managed, I think it is a good source of energy. The only thing other than the safety part is the resources it needs in order to operate this thing, because you need a lot of water. Like in Russia, they use water. Plus, how do you dispose of the radioactive waste being produced by the nuclear cells, right?
Yeah.
So
So
just those two things. Yeah,
So your recommendation would be for the Philippines to go ahead with it or not?
I would say like we should explore it. Maybe not go ahead right away, but at least explore it. Can we actually run a nuclear power plant in the Philippines? We have one in Bataan, which is pretty close by in our area here.
Mm.
Unfortunately, you cannot use it anymore because it's over 25 years or something. And it's in a poor state, I would say. It's not operational. But if they want to really look into it, and they should consider it as a potential option, then I'm okay with that. Let's see. Maybe it could actually work. Maybe we could find a place where it can be securely built, safe from, they could put in measures to ensure that in case there are earthquakes, because we have earthquakes here, and storms,
Yeah, I
it
mean,
won't.
that's huge risk.
Yeah, it won't
So what
explode. It
about
won't
the
leak out.
cost? What about the cost per kilowatt hour? I mean, we have a cost of 10 pesos here.
Hmm.
Will nuclear be cheaper or higher?
Well, based on Japan.
Putting you to the test now.
Yeah, well, based on the experiences in Japan, I would say that it is much cheaper to use nuclear power. You have to understand, like here in the Philippines, what is our main source of electricity right now? I would say either it's oil or water, hydraulic dams, right? Because we have a couple of big dams here in Luzon. As far as I know, they use those for electricity. With the
Number
gas,
one in the Philippines. Number one in the Philippines is by far coal.
we use coal.
Coal.
Wow, I didn't know
Coal
that.
is number one in the Philippines.
I didn't
Yeah.
know that.
And then I think number two might even be geothermal. Philippines has a lot of geothermal power plants, which is
We
good.
do. That's
They
something that
are
I'm not familiar with.
renewables,
Hmm.
and there are diesel plants,
It's
but
it,
smaller regional ones, stuff
it,
like that. Diesel gensets, cooperatives that
yeah.
sell it, but
It's
they are inefficient,
but
expensive.
but when you listen to the news, especially around summertime, you don't hear about the geothermal plants. That's the thing. You hear
Yeah,
about call them Angat Dam, and what is the other one? There are at least three big dams in Luzon alone that produces
yeah,
this power, and they always monitor them during the summer months because these dams determine the power supply, at the same time the water supply. And you know what happens in Manila during the summer months? They have rolling blackouts and rolling water shortages in Manila, and even
how
here
many how many gigawatts are those dams? I mean, I
I
know there is
mm,
some hydro, but
yeah,
I didn't realize it had such a big impact on the power supply in Metro Manila.
I would
I
say
thought it
yeah.
was more like the maybe after. I mean, number one is coal.
Hmm.
Maybe number two is geothermal. Number three could be diesel. Number four, I would say, would be hydro. I don't
Hmm.
think it's number two or three, but could be potentially.
I
We should have Googled it in advance. We need to Google it
Yeah,
and
we should.
provide an update in the next show. What exactly is the power split in the Philippines?
Yeah.
But my opinion is don't even consider nuclear. Don't even go close to it.
Mm,
It is in operation a low carbon energy, but there is so much involved in mastering it, in managing
yeah.
it. And when you look at Germany, the cost of decommissioning a nuclear power plant, that alone kills it. And that's what
Wow.
people don't take into consideration. The German government has asked every company that's got a nuclear power plant, please put a contingency budget of
Yeah.
5 billion
Uh-huh.
euro aside to pay for the cost of decommissioning the nuclear
Wow.
power plant. Isn't that a nice little sum? Do you want to
I
add
know,
that
huh?
to
That's
your budget for your
yeah.
nuclear power plant? And then on top of that comes the liability for the nuclear
Mm,
waste. In Germany, that still hasn't been solved properly. It's temporarily stalled in stored in a salt mine. The German government told the companies that own nuclear power plants, and by the way, I think it was a figure of 50 billion euro.
wow.
Please
Yeah.
put that money together to pay us for managing the long-term liability
So
of the nuclear waste.
for
This
example,
is the typical issue, just for me to add
yeah.
that here. We do not take into consideration the long-term risks and liabilities of a lot of the pollution that we are creating. But
Mhm.
with
Yeah.
nuclear waste, the risk is so gigantic in terms of health that governments are saying it must be managed. And when they then truly calculate the real cost, it becomes a killer for the whole project. But
Wow.
most
Yeah.
countries don't really price that in.
But
That's why it still looks attractive. Once you price that in, no deal anymore.
I would say like we need to really explore renewables. I would say every
There's no alternative.
I know, but the problem is what kind of renewal? Like here in the Philippines, like I mentioned, every year during the summer months, they always report about the dam levels, the levels of the dam, and they would report, well, we're gonna have running blackouts because we don't have enough water supply. We're hoping rain would come, to fill the dams again, and so we have like more power.
Mm.
We have a lot of sun, and yet we don't have like the solar power, the solar farms that are needed even at a small community level. Here in Subic we have one that is powering what do you call this place, SBMA. SBMA, Subic Bay Metropolitan Authority.
Yeah,
They
yeah, yeah,
commissioned
yeah.
something about 3 or 4 years ago, but
Yeah, yeah, yeah.
here in Olongapo itself, I don't think our power is coming from a oil or gas power plant. I believe it's still coming from what NGCP, the National Grid Corporation of the Philippines. I think
Yeah.
that's what it's called.
Mm.
And they get their power from these dams, these hydraulic dams, uh, in the Angat Dam and what is the name? The other one?
I've got the
Yeah.
data now. I've got the data now.
Awesome.
We completely forgot to mention natural gas, which obviously should be number 2, actually.
Wow.
And I kind of should have known that, but somehow it slipped. Number 1 is coal with 42% of the power that is generated here. Let me just check which year this is from. It doesn't actually say here the year. This is basically Wikipedia data.
But is there like a
but
location for the plants, the power plants?
there are many different locations for the
Wow.
coal.
Okay.
But basically 42% is coal. Then gas is 24%. Then geothermal is 13.3. Then hydro, quite high. You are right. It's 11.8. So it's number 4. And then oil-based is number 5 with 7.4.
But what's
so
funny
those
though?
are the data here. Yeah.
Awesome data. But what is awesome though? Well, what's funny though is you don't hear about these other power plants in the Philippines. You always hear about the dam and how the water levels impact the supply of power to Manila, because Manila is the critical city, and that's why you have these rolling blackouts during the summer months, and then there are cities or places that they run out of water for days on end, simply because there's not enough water from these dams.
Yeah, I mean, that is because the hydro is seasonally a little bit fluctuating due to the water levels. And I mean, this is as well an issue with solar and with wind.
Yeah, of course.
You have small fluctuations, and with solar, obviously, it's only during the day. But we already discussed that as we are moving towards a smart grid, we will have more and more connection. That table there was data from 2014.
But you know what?
Renewables was less than 1%. Now that will be much bigger. Wind, solar, biomass, that's been growing a lot. And some of the big boys like Ayala, like first gen,
Yes,
are ramping up. I mean, first
Renewables,
gen,
yep.
I think, is going into gas as well, which is cleaner than coal. But
Yeah.
you know, gas doesn't excite me too much.
Yep.
I'm more excited by renewables.
It's
geothermal,
the
hydro.
lesser
small
of
small
two, yeah.
scale hydro. Yeah, small scale hydro for me is okay. Large scale hydro might be problematic because you have to flood too much land.
Yeah.
You interfere too much into sometimes as well native land. So yeah, but these are the trends. These are the developments. I don't recommend nuclear at all. I was a school kid when Chernobyl blew up, and we couldn't eat from our vegetable garden anymore because of the radioactive rain that was coming down. So, you know, we experienced it in Europe as school kids. And definitely, I'm not a friend of nuclear because of the risk, because of the gigantic cost and the residual environmental impact. Yes, the operation itself, but the mining of the uranium, the management, and the ongoing nuclear waste issue, all of that is a long bag of stuff that people often don't take into consideration.
There's something. Okay. Speaking of renewables, one thing I would say that we have a lot of. You know what? You know what it is? We have a lot of that here in the Philippines. Garbage, waste. Right?
Yes.
Not just plastic, for example, but we have a lot of organic waste here in the Philippines. And that brings me to another potential source of energy: biomass and biofuel, for example. Would that be something that is possible? Can we, like here in the Philippines, every household plant, like, you know what is the word in English? Sweet potatoes, right?
Yeah.
Kamoteng kahoy. That's what we call it here in the Philippines. Can everybody plant that? Because that could be kamote can actually be used as biofuel. I've read a study about it.
There's so much that you can use, but then it's a logistical issue, and it's an issue of, are you taking growing land away from agriculture? This country, you know, what I've noticed, the Philippines, good, healthy vegetables and fruits are very expensive. This is not good because it leads to people eating mainly processed food. The diet of the Filipinos is too meat focused, too processed,
Yep.
and it leads to a lot of health issues. A lot of Filipinos die much earlier than they should be living longer lives. So we need a revolution of agriculture that provides more fresh and healthy produce to people. So we need to be very, very careful how much land we convert to
But
biomass that then will be turned into fuel.
yeah.
It's not necessarily the most efficient way, but the waste that we have got, I totally agree with you. But then waste to energy is too crude,
Yeah,
in my
yeah.
opinion,
Yeah.
because you're getting very little power for all the money that you're spending. And if you have a high moisture content, which is usually the case here in this part of the world, it's difficult to burn your stuff because the
Yep.
calorific value is not good. If you have only plastic bottles or other plastic waste, which is
PETs, yeah.
essentially oil, then it burns like crazy and you will get, good return on your fuel. But if
Something.
you, yeah,
Yeah, yeah, yeah. Well, something a few months ago, there has been a debate on that here in Subic and Olongapo because there was a company that proposed to build a waste to energy plant
yeah,
here in Subic in
yeah,
Olongapo City, and of course it spells it means opportunity, jobs, etc., etc. And Olongapo, for example, has always been one of those cities that has made a lot of money with garbage. So it's a very long story that has a lot of political twists and turns, but yeah,
usually
Olongapo has been
those,
making money
yeah,
out of garbage a few years back, and this is another opportunity for Olongapo to make that because basically when you have the power plant here, Pampanga, Nueva Ecija, all of the nearby towns and cities and provinces, including Metro Manila, will be sending their garbage to Olongapo so that it could be burned here and produce energy, right?
Yeah, but just
So
imagine the gigantic traffic that you're
it will,
creating for
yeah,
shipping the
yeah,
rubbish around, and
yep,
the power that you're getting out is not so huge. It would be
mm-hmm.
much more effective to do it in a decentralized manner.
and,
The money that you have to invest, there is as well a proposal for Quezon City. I
yeah,
think we're talking about 500 million US dollars. The,
yeah,
the investment cost is huge. I've seen a Malaysian technology, a small sized one called the
mm-hmm.
Asher, that apparently has been used in several places in the Philippines as well. It doesn't really generate power, but it turns the um, stuff, the mixed household waste, into ash that people use as fertilizer,
Yeah,
as
yeah,
long as there are no heavy metals in there that
in
would
there, yeah, yeah, of course,
produce, contamination in the ash. Apparently, in Marikina, they are using it in some other places, and the fertilizer is very good. So you have a low cost machine that has its own pollution control.
mm-hmm.
And I have this indoor air quality monitoring tool
Yep,
called Yuhu, which is co-invented by a Filipino. I put it next to it, I monitored it, and I was amazed that there wasn't any detection of additional pollutants there.
yeah,
So if you aggregate some of those, you have a much lower cost way of tackling the waste, and you don't need to invest into one operation. If you put into a waste to energy plant 500 million US dollars, you cannot move that thing to anywhere
oh
else. You
yeah,
lock it
of
in.
course, yeah.
What's happened in East Germany after the wall came down,
Excuse me.
a lot of West German consultants and businessmen built these over-spec'd waste-to-energy plants,
Yeah,
made a
yeah,
lot of money with it, and now these things are sitting there half empty, not running,
not running at all.
not
Yeah,
running profitably. And I think you have the same in Sweden, where the waste that is being generated
and
due to waste minimization, recycling, and efficiency is not sufficient anymore to run those waste-to-energy plants properly.
and let's
So,
face it, aside
yeah.
from those issues, you also have the concern with regards to health. I called last year, you know, because of my work, right? Because I'm trying to
Yeah.
find a solution
Yeah.
to plastic, right?
Yeah. Yeah.
So basically, one of the things that I did last year was call this company in England, in the UK,
Mm. Mm.
and ask them, is it possible for us to send these plastic to a waste to energy plant? Because they have one over there. in the city where I called.
Yeah.
And he told me like, well, you could, but you will have to pay. Well, and me, I'm like, well, I thought you guys are converting waste to energy. Why can't you guys bring the plastic to a waste to energy plant, right? Because apparently you have to pay them in order
Yeah.
for them to put in the chemicals
Tipping
and
fee.
pay. Yeah,
Tipping
yeah,
fee.
yep, exactly. So that's what
Yes.
happens. So that's why they can't use it. At the same time, you're dealing with pollutants, and I noticed that, like in my case, because I'm allergic now. When I was young, I don't have it, but now for some reason, uh, you go to Valenzuela, Bulacan, Metro Manila part, Valenzuela. That's like the plastic capital of the Philippines, I would say. You know, the Gatchalians, all right? That's their business. That's where most of the plastics are being produced. Uh, and when you go there, the first thing you would notice, in my case, my allergy flares up when I go there.
Wow.
And that's because, and a lot of people are experiencing the same thing. You know, like they are very allergic because the air, you have all of these microplastics. You have a lot of
Yeah.
plastics that are just sitting around and are decomposing. I'm not sure if that's the right word, but you know, it is under the sun. Some of the chemicals on these plastics, they get into the air. You inhale them, and then you have hika. Uh,
Yeah, you
what's
get the
hika?
PM 2.5, the burning of the plastic,
And that too,
in the
because they
open
have like the
burning. That
plants
is,
there, right?
yeah,
So
that is, I mean, that is happening everywhere in the
everywhere,
Philippines. The
yeah,
open burning is illegal, but it happens.
it
And that
happens.
is
Yeah.
when I can see on my air quality monitoring tool, it goes through the roof. And yeah, if you have that in an area where there's a lot of plastic being manufactured, then you have the additional manufacturing impact.
Mm-hmm.
And in addition to the open burning, so yeah, that's interesting. I mean, I think decentralized solutions, some people have come up with, okay, this is the waste that we have in our area. Let's separate the plastic, the high calorific
Yeah.
value, turn it into diesel. You can do that. And, some of it, don't incinerate it at 1,500, use other technologies like the pyrolysis, or the
Chemical recycling.
autoclave solutions,
Yeah.
recycle some of the materials, basically separate it into different fractions and turn it into value. We shouldn't see waste as waste. We should see waste as potential value
But
and identify what is the best utilization. Your biomass, you can turn it into methane.
yep.
You can make beautiful methane from it, and then power a gas cooker with it.
With
So
it.
there
Yep.
are many, many different ways how we can actually turn biomass, physical waste, into reusable stuff, but it requires some sophistication. It
There
requires
is.
collaboration, and it requires as well people working together without corruption and without too many vested interests to get the best solution for a region in the interest of everybody and particularly of the environment. And that's often the stumbling block.
Well, let's wrap it up. Thank you so much, guys,
Yeah.
for watching today's
session.
episode. If you haven't subscribed yet, please, give us a subscribe. If you like the show, give us a like, comment,
Share it with your friends, guys.
share it with your friends. It'll be nice. It's gonna help our channel grow. Anyways, thank you so much. Until next time, we'll catch you on the flip side.
I want to see you, Botak, Bold, Calvo, next
Ah,
time.
yeah.
Go for it, man. Get rid of the fluff. All right, guys. See you. Cheers.
Cheers.
Standing underneath the rows of trees, I can see where the ocean meets the sky.